Hello, this is Edith Newmeyer, and I'm the author of the book, The Mystery of Adam. Today I want to talk about Cinderella and the Cinderella complex, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper than just the Cinderella complex. That is just kind of a start. Now, everybody knows the story about Cinderella, right? I like the newer version of Cinderella, the newest movie, and I think it's a Disney movie. I'm not quite sure, but and but you know the story of Cinderella, right? Um, she grows up in this wonderful family with a mother and father loving her, and then the misfortune happens and the mother dies, and the dad raises the child. Um, they have a wonderful relationship, and however, he is going to get married again to somebody else. So Cinderella is getting a stepmother. However, the dad didn't choose very well. And so he gets married to this very abusive, very controlling mother with two daughters who are just as controlling and abusive. So Cinderella has to deal with this situation. It seems like in the story, the dad, I think in one story, the dad actually dies. And so he's not there anymore either. Other stories, dad is just, I don't know what happened to dad, okay? He's just not enough around to take care of Cinderella's problem, or he's not aware, or he's traveling, or whatever, for whatever, he's not there to really rescue Cinderella. So Cinderella is in this relationship where this new stepmother is putting her almost in the position, actually, no, she's putting her in the position of a maid, okay, a kitchen maid. So she's doomed to the kitchen and to serve the other stepsisters, and she is in rags, dressed in rags, and all she has is animals for friends, okay. And in that dilemma, um, again, she is abused, but because she's such a wonderful person, um, she's kind and gentle, and has all these wonderful feminine qualities, right? She um, is seen. She's beautiful, right? She's seen. She came across this prince that sweeps her off her feet and marries her. Okay, so happy ending. Cinderella is doing really bad. Life is not going good, and here that prince comes and sweeps her off. And so that's what this lady called um, the Cinderella complex. And this lady that described it was Colette Dowling. And you can look that up. It is the tendency of helpless women being rescued, and I call it helpless women, okay? Because Cinderella had wonderful characteristics, kind and loving and caring. However, these characteristics, they were to the extreme that she couldn't set boundaries and people were taking advantage of her. So Cinderella created a pretty terrible life for herself. Um, yeah, she was kind and everything that is so highly valued in our culture. But when you cannot keep these wonderful characteristics, personalities in balance, and people will take advantage of it, it is not a good thing. Now, a little bit more for the background. Now, the Cinderella story, this fairy tale, plays in a patriarchy, right? In a patriarchy. And I know in egalitarian circles, people talk very much about patriarchy and how bad patriarchy is. But yet, in this fairy tale, and in many others, and one of them is Snow White, in many others, um, this patriarchy is not shown in a negative way. Okay? Because, see, as long as Cinderella is in this patriarchy, the dad is there to protect her. Or should I say, when she was under her dad, she was protected and loved, and spoiled, very spoiled. Okay, she grew up very pampered, but then this evil stepmother comes and she is not capable of defending herself and standing up for herself. Okay, so I don't know how many years she lived under this, uh, really thumb of the stepmother. I don't know. But eventually she gets to the point where she is now old enough to marry. So between 16 and 18, maybe, between 16 and 20. Because in those days, when those fairy tales were written, kids got married when they could have gotten married when they were 16. Okay? But she is old enough to get married. So if she's old enough to get married, I think she is really kind of more mature. She's not an immature kid anymore, and yet she has not learned to set these boundaries. So under her father's, uh, when she was with her father, she was okay, but it it looks like all of a sudden her father was not protecting her anymore, and this evil stepmother could come in and abuse her. Okay, she could come in and totally abuse her. My question is, if this is a patriarchy, where was dad? Okay, was stepmother okay? They said she died. Matter of fact, some stories even say that the stepmother had the father killed. That sounds even more terrible. But to get to the money, right? So my question is, in the other stories, I mean, where was the stepfather? Was he just totally um, under this evil stepmother's thumb? Like in the case of Snow White, um, was this stepmother totally controlling that dad, that he couldn't do anything, about his daughter? It seems to me that the patriarchy really had really nothing to do with the abuse of the daughter Cinderella. Okay, in the opposite, it seems like matriarchy was taken over. In other words, the stepmother, was taking over the control of the family. Okay, so even though it is traditionally a patriarchal society, matriarchy took over. In the case of many fairy tales, that is actually the case. Many fairy tales portray this evil female, in the story. Now, I understand they are fairy tales, and they could also kind of portray women as something evil. However, we can see that these women are actually abusing other women, which is pretty terrible. Okay, it looks like this woman, the Cinderella, Snow White, had to be rescued again by somebody from the patriarchy in order that she could have again a happy life. Okay, again, it's a fairy tale, and we can learn many things from this fairy tale. One thing that I have learned from this fairy tale is that no matter whether you are a man or a woman, when you control the situation, it will go sour. So the sourness in of the relationships does not depend on just male dominating, things, but it also depends on female dominating. And in this case, or in two cases, Snow White and in the Cinderella story, because the Snow White was not taught to set boundaries, but to stand up for herself, her stepmother and her stepsisters took advantage of her. And it took another man to step in and rescue her. Okay? Now, for me, that is very odd. That is very, very, very odd. Because today we are making it look like patriarchy is so bad. I don't hear anybody complaining about matriarchy. Again, I have friends and acquaintances in the egalitarian circles, and I hear that over and over again. Oh, patriarchy is bad. Oh, patriarchy is bad. However, in many cases, patriarchy can actually be for the rescue, of women, especially if these women are not capable of standing up for themselves. So, as parents, we have a very big responsibility to teach our girls to set boundaries. I think boundaries is another uh, lesson we can learn from this story. Girls and boys need to set boundaries. Now, look in the case of the man. The man obviously made very poor decisions in getting married to this woman that was very abusive, and then later on couldn't stand up and silence or even say, hey, I'm done with you. So even the father of this girl, Cinderella and Snow White, couldn't stand up to their wives. They were in a sense victims themselves. So I am saying, I'm learning from that we not only need to teach our girls boundaries, how to set boundaries, but also our boys. Okay? Boys need to set just as many boundaries because there are predators out there, and they're not all men. Okay? There are just as many female predators out there that will harm our boys. So, that, for me, is the story about Cinderella. This is something that we need to learn. Now, we know fairy tales are for children, right? Well, children cannot understand the relational issue in fairy tales. They see, oh, happy end, and that's how far they go. But most of the time, fairy tales always teach a lesson. Okay? And they were, in the beginning, when they were written, they were actually not written for children. They were written and told for adults. Adults were listening to fairy tales because they taught some valuable lessons. I grew up with fairy tales, okay? But unfortunately, I did not learn the lessons that fairy tales bring. For instance, yeah, it is good to be kind and generous and, forgiving and all these things. However, if you are being abused, you better stop the abuse. You better stand up and you better say, no, enough is enough. Now, there's another fairy tale that I want to bring in, and it really has nothing to do with a bad stepmother. but it has to do with that Cinderella um, uh, complex, or what is it called? Cinderella, complex, Cinderella complex. And that is the fairy tale of Beauty and the Beast. Very, very typical. Beauty is a person that needs to be just wonderful and loving and kind and bubbly and cheerful. And that is the way she is going to change Beast back into a human being. Yeah, sure. That really works. Well, I do not think that that works. Okay? I think it is much more valuable to tell your boys and your girls, boys and girls, when you meet a beast, you better run. Okay? There is no way in this world that you should be in the position to be nice, nice, nice to this beast, and that beast will change. Most likely, the beast will not change. Most likely. Most likely, you will be torn to shreds before the story is over. Okay? And why? Because you were under that impression that, well, if I am nice enough, that beast is going to change into a wonderful prince. That is not really life, is it? We all know that is not life. But our children need to learn that. And you, as parents, you need to teach your children right. Is it right or is it wrong to let your kids watch these fairy tales? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay to let them watch these fairy tales as long as you can sit down with them afterwards and teach them the valuable lessons. Ask them, now, is this realistic? Like, for instance, Beauty and the Beast. Now, is that realistic? Will a beast really change into a handsome, kind prince if you're just nice enough? What does reality tell you? Well, reality tells me that has not happened. A beast is most likely staying a beast. Okay? And if you're not looking for a good person, you might as well hang it up. Okay? Well, and most of all, if you're not setting boundaries, okay, if you don't learn to set boundaries with people and say, wait a minute, no, you ain't going to treat me like this, then I think our kids cannot learn either. So I want you to think about that. There's nothing wrong letting your kids watch these, fairy tales, but talk to them about life lessons, because fairy tales are great to do that. That's what they were meant to do. Fairy tales were meant to teach lessons, okay? Lessons. And so with that, I'm going to finish up today. And I hope you learned something. I hope I stimulated your thinking, and maybe it is helpful for your life or for the life of your children. And with that, I want to tell you, keep studying, keep thinking, and let the Holy Spirit guide you.